Okay, hi guys. I was, this is kind of related to my last hobby update, but I was thinking about what to do if I or one of you out there wanted to war game a what if Mohács campaign. Um, I'm talking about the Battle of Mohács in 1526. This is when the Ottomans pretty soundly defeated the Hungarian army in southern Hungary, and caused, at least for the next 10 or so, 15 or so years, for Hungary to be divided, with the Ottoman part initially being a vassal under the Sepoyas, and then you have John Sepoya, and then you have the northern part of Hungary under Habsburg rule, and then in Transylvania becomes a kind of tributary state to the Ottomans, and at various points is more or less independent depending on who's in charge. The battle used to be the subject of a lot of kind of mythology, that basically the Hungarian knights were just massacred by gunpowder technology, and that there was like a romantic charge. That's not really true. I mean, there's like a lot of stories like that, there's a sort of basis to it, but it's not really, that wasn't really the case. But in terms of wargaming it, what could a Hungarian player do, or how could you design the scenario to have some sort of Hungarian victory in the Mohács campaign? So this is going to be kind of just talking in my general thoughts about it. So the Hungarians did have a pretty severe structural problem in terms of how their state was organized. The king always had a hard time getting money. So you have a feudal aristocracy. They don't want to necessarily give money to the king or do military service. In the 15th century, you have János Hunyadi, who is able to really resoundingly defeat the Ottomans on a few occasions because of his, he's kind of able to get everyone together, that kind of charismatic leadership, I guess. And then you have his son, Matthias Corvinus, who's the namesake of my channel here. And he does create like a mercenary army, but he's pretty shrewd, I think, King Matthias Corvinus, because he doesn't really try to confront the Ottomans head on, and he kind of recognized the limitations of Hungary compared to the Ottoman Empire. So he doesn't really try to fight them directly. But the problem, I think, for Hungarian military power in the beginning of the 16th century is we have very low kind of financial capacity of the state, and you need money to fight, which is not like the most exciting thing to think about in a war game, I guess, but that is pretty important. Another thing, try to move closer to the map here. The territory of Hungary at this time was pretty large, but the population was very low density population. So you have a lot of agricultural lands, and it's very productive in that regard. But you also need people to to fight and to support an army. So if you don't have the population, especially in this period, to levy taxes and is kind of doing enough business to keep the economy going. Not that the Hungarian economy, as far as I know, was bad in this period. There were just limits. A very rural society is just going to have lower kind of productivity than one that's more diversified, right? So that was another kind of problem in the decades leading up to it, and so a lot of these issues come to a head at Mohács. You have Suleiman, who I will need to do more primary source reading on my own for the Mohács campaign, but I think by Mohács, my sense is that Suleiman is more of a confident commander, at Belgrade and at Rhodes. He's not really in charge. I mean, he is, but it's really the viziers that are making most of the decisions, especially at Belgrade, as I've talked about at length, and also to a great extent at Rhodes. Now, Mohács, I think he has more direct role because this would be his third military campaign, and I think he's kind of coming into his own at that point. He would be at Mohács. He would be in his mid-20s at that point, I think, in terms of age. So Mohács is down. Oh, where is it? There's Belgrade. There it is. There's Mohács. So it's down here in the south. Now, what could the Hungarians have done differently, to win in terms of wargaming? Like, if you want to do a scenario, there were reserves available. So I talked about all these structural problems, but it's kind of hard to implement in a war game, right? But there were reserves that were supposed to get to Mohács that did not arrive, and I have seen online people that have wargamed this have add that in as a possibility. I think that's interesting, and that's if you're just doing the battle itself. If I were to do a longer term campaign that would give the Hungarians maybe more of a fighting chance, or to do like this kind of what if. For the Ottoman player, I would make them have to deal with this journey up north. This is where actually a lot of Ottoman campaigns were kind of made or broken. Between the seasons, not having enough supplies. Even though this route, they were pretty good at getting stuff north. In the east, it's a different story, but between the rivers and, this is a pretty temperate climate, a lot of, arable land, you can kind of move troops up here pretty easily. But for the Ottoman player in a campaign scenario, what I would do is make them have to, deal with some of those factors in terms of, when you actually do fight Mohács, you're not going to just have the whole army necessarily. Maybe you've already taken losses from campaign factors. That is one thing in war games I wish in general there was more of, is like kind of pre-deployment or pre-battle like campaign roles that you have to make, because that can determine a lot of a battle more so than the actual kind of combat in some cases. So I would do that. I would also, of course, allow the Hungarians to potentially get those reserves that they would have had that never made it to the field in time. But I would also make the Hungarians have some campaign factors, even though they're fighting on their own territory. So it's not as difficult, going from gathering all the troops in Hungary and moving south versus the Ottomans having to mobilize 100,000 men and go from Constantinople all the way up to southern Hungary. So now this is another factor of like a what if scenario with Mohács. So if the Hungarians had been able to defeat Suleiman at Mohács, what would have happened next? And I don't really have a firm idea of this. Historians don't like to do what ifs. I do, but what would he have done? I'll need to do more reading about that, but to get an idea of what he may have done. But if they had been defeated at Mohács, probably they would have fallen back, and because they have Belgrade at this point, they would have probably fallen back and tried again next year. And I don't know if, depending on how soundly the Ottomans would have been defeated at Mohács, if they would have maybe tried to just stay in the field, and fight another battle, or if, the Hungarians would have been able to press them. I don't know if the Hungarians would have pressed them. I need to read more about Lajos II or Louis II and his kind of leadership. I'm really not sure, because even if, let's say everything goes right for the Hungarians, they have those reserves they needed, you're still having to fight a field battle with a lot of troops against a lot of Ottoman troops. And even if you have, your best crack guys, you're still going to run out of, run out of steam eventually. So my idea right now is I think the Ottomans just would have withdrawn and gone back, basically gone home. They would have probably tried again the next year. I think that's my idea right now. And I don't think the Hungarians would have tried to press into the Balkans, because that had been an idea among the European states, like in the 15th century, like under Hunyadi, was, we're going to get a crusade going and we're going to go into the Balkans, we're going to liberate the Balkans, kind of thing. And just never really coalesces. They always have a problem with that. And I think another factor that was working against the Hungarians is the Habsburgs desired the Hungarian crown. And, there had been a conflict between the Hungarians and the Habsburgs over, in the early beginning of the 16th century. So that's another factor. And then you also have the fact that the Habsburgs, the Italian wars are going on like at the same time. So could the Hungarians have gotten foreign support? Probably not. And the French famously, or perhaps rather infamously, they will have an alliance with the Ottomans. I think a little bit later, I forget what date that is, but they'll cooperate. The French and the Ottomans will cooperate. Really, there's a lot of kind of diplomatic stuff that works against the Hungarians, in addition to all the kind of boring economic factors. In terms of wargaming, if you wanted to continue, and say, okay, they win at Mohács, Louis II says, okay, I'm going to go on a crusade into the Balkans. That could be interesting to game out. But that would be something where you would need a campaign to track the kind of the resources in a more granular way, or not granular, but just to it would be really hard for them. The Hungarian player would have to deal with a lot of supply problems, living off the land and that sort of thing. Maybe if they're in a territory with mostly like Muslims or like kind of Orthodox Christian subjects. They would, I don't know, maybe the Hungarians wouldn't mind doing like chevauché type stuff, but you know, it's still probably difficult to supply an army like that. Another thing that would be, you know, could be a what if that would affect, you know, the Ottoman success at Mohács would be like just the timing. So basically the Ottoman campaigns in this period had to follow like a pretty strict, kind of a strict timeline, because you have to mobilize everyone in the summer. So that would typically be like May to July time frame. You spend July and August, I mean, depending on which campaign we're talking about, but then you spend, you know, like say July, but definitely like August and September marching up from Constantinople to you know, to Central Europe, and you know, that's why I don't think the Ottomans would have remained in the field, you know, or the Hungarians would have been able to press their attack, because they're also dealing with the seasonal change. You know, you can really only stay in the field so long. It's a little more acute for the Ottomans just because they have so many more people. So that's another kind of thing, is the timing. You know, if you were to campaign, you know, do a campaign game and you know, keep track of the time somehow, you would need to do, keep that in mind, that, you know, really pretty much October is when, you know, it's about done. You're about done in terms of fighting capability. Okay, so that was kind of a long discussion. I hope that was clear or interesting. I guess just as I finish up, you know, I mostly use this map, but I also drew up this campaign map that's got the cities in Hungary and the rivers. I think I'll keep reusing this because, you know, it's nice to have a map that doesn't necessarily have like the modern borders, and it's, you know, I printed this on hex paper, but, and then this is from, this is a facsimile of one of the chronicles. I think I've shown this on the channel before, one of the campaigns in Hungary, but this one has some neat illustrations in it, and this is by, well, Sinan Çavuş is like his pen name, but it's Matrakshi Nasa, who's a famous Ottoman. He was a soldier and wrote a chronicle, and, you know, drew a lot of these interesting paintings. So it's got pictures of the camp, but I just kind of put that here more for, you know, eye candy kind of thing. But yeah, in case you were wondering what that book is. So that's the video. Hope you know, if you watch the end, hope you like it. If you find this research interesting, you know, I do have the Buy Me a Coffee, so, you know, feel free to donate, but, you know, no pressure. So, all right, thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you in the next video.